All right. Well, everyone, welcome to Everything Teams Phone Live. I believe this is episode 27, and we have an amazing guest today. Super excited to have Tom Arbuthnot join us from the other side of the pond. It's evening time. It's typically have a drink in the hand time. Is it 8 p.m. your time, Tom? What time is
Yeah,
it
it's
over
8
there?
o'clock my time. Yeah, I've got my drink going. So yeah,
That,
for the international audience, it's definitely drinking time on a Friday in London.
that's
and
right. That's right.
and it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so I decided to
I,
join
I
Tom
appreciate
for.
the solidarity. That's good.
I haven't joined you, but you don't know what's in this. I am showing this just because it's the viral mug that's taken the country by storm, the Stanley 40, whatever this is. Anyway, so it's pretty. All right,
What?
so we'll get that out of the way.
That's a whole nother episode right there.
We don't know what's in there. We don't know what's in there. All right. Well, Tom, thanks so much for joining us on Everything Teams Phone Live. It's exciting to have a chat with you. We always get the latest information from you about Microsoft and all its and all the facets. So it certainly helps us to keep up with you via Empowering.Cloud. And Tom, why don't you tell us what Empowering.Cloud does? Because I do it all the time, but I'd love to hear your take on Empowering.Cloud.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we've just celebrated our first year anniversary of the platform, so really pleased about that. So basic idea is I used to consult a lot in this space, so mostly working with large enterprise customers, and we wanted to take all that kind of knowledge of what I do, what the wider community does, and bring it together. So we have a community tier where you can log on completely free, sponsor backed, lots of really great supporters, G12 being one, thank you very much. And we bring in subject matter experts from around the world. So there's 28 different authors all doing 15-minute briefings on everything, E911, Teams Phone, analog, like all the little niche areas. So that's the main thing, and then we have a premium program called Enablement. So we train OEMs, we train partners, and we train enterprise. So we have the enterprise thing is early days. We've got one enterprise in the mix there, but we're training 7 partners and a couple of OEMs, and it's just learning path certificates, deep research on the ecosystem. So free community content, go check it out. And if your organization needs that kind of learning path certificates, extra stuff, that's what we do.
And I would chime in and highly recommend it, because if listeners are not aware, the Microsoft documentation is intimidating at best. And so having a resource like your platform cuts through, I'm not going to say the noise, but the confusion of where to find maybe very specific pointed direction towards how to do something.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Thanks.
Yeah, well done.
That's the goal, kind of demarketing it very real world. And the idea of bringing in like a bunch of experts is you get real world opinions from people who've done these things. Mm-hmm. So you find all the little foibles and niches, and you can interact with the authors. That's very much the idea.
Mm-hmm. That's the value. I mean, seeing having everyone come together and provide their specific, niche of knowledge and deliver it to you in a compact sort of, follow along way. It's fantastic. We tell everyone almost every show when we talk about Empowering.Cloud. And so just so everyone knows, if you don't know, it's Empowering.Cloud. So head over to Empowering.Cloud and sign up. If you're running a network or a Teams instance, and if you're in charge of running the Teams infrastructure, if you're considering this is something for everyone to take part in and gain insight from. And then I use your content all the time for reposting, because we try to keep our listeners and viewers up to speed with what's going on in the Microsoft space. And there's no reason for me to recreate what you guys do a great job at creating.
That's what it's for. Yeah, I appreciate it.
So you see me. So I just repost it and put it out there. It couldn't be said any better. So Tom, thanks so much for taking the time to join us this evening and this afternoon and the evening. So we certainly appreciate you joining. There's a lot to talk about today.
There is a lot to talk about. We just had the big Microsoft partner show, so we got a load of stuff out of that, and we've had Microsoft's Q4 results, so there were some new numbers dropped there, so we have got a lot to get into.
There is that, and that's the Inspire discussion. So the Inspire discussion, the Q4 results for Microsoft, or the quarterly results for Microsoft, and then your update that you do a monthly update to say, here's what's new for Microsoft within Microsoft. It's a bit more technical and in the weeds of what's happening in the space. So there's just a lot to cover. So I think we should just hop right in and get to it. I'll share my screen And let's see here. Go pick a screen and go share this. If you hear some work going on, I do have some construction going on around the house, so apologies for that. Okay. I'm going to start right here. This is just kind of a slide that we've had to update over the last, 6 months, 7 months. We've been doing this on Everything Teams Phone. 17 million PSTN subscribers.
Yeah,
that's
massive.
Big
jump. Yeah, big jump. So our last public number was 15 million. So substantial jump. Microsoft have said a couple of times they've done 5 million, give or take, in the last 12 months. What's interesting is not just the number jumping, but that momentum as well. It's significant.
Well, as an organization that pushes Teams Phone into different organizations, or into the enterprise, into the small business, into the small enterprise, we see it every single day, the benefits of using Microsoft Teams, the benefits of using the PSTN as your platform, Teams and PSTN as your platform for calling for a business. Brandon every day comes up with new automation tricks in Power Automate that allows for our customers to really take advantage of some of the ecosystem that is Microsoft Teams. So it's fun to see how the transition is really taking place. I think that the phone business itself has always been, since, let's say, the Bell breakup, has been such a disparate marketplace, right? And no true leaders in the industry. And I think what Teams has done has really consolidated everybody, not at the telco level, because the telco level, there's still a lot of different providers at the telco level, right?
68 connected operators now. So, and then there's direct routing on top of that. So there's lots of options around the operator. But you're right, as platform, it's a while since we've had that dominant a player, and the cloud has really rejigged everything. All the traditional players have kind of changed. If you look at the kind of telephony industry 10 years ago, 5 years ago, now the big players have changed over that time.
Well, if you think about it, like I look at it as a mobile phone. Let's say just take the mobile phone operating systems, right? Take your Android and Apple. You've got some competitors in the space. They're equal in weight, I guess. But if you think about that's the enterprise communication space, it's been so disparate. Now that you've got some bit of consolidation in, let's say, Teams, and there's obviously Cisco continues to be a large player in that space, and then I'm not going to mention the Z word, but Z as well. So you have these three different players, and so now what I look at in Teams, for me, the way I think about it is it's a true platform. Whereas the other two players are not necessarily platforms; they're the kind of that provider as well, right? But you've got the platform in place. It allows for so much more to be built on top of it, and so.
Yeah, I think you're right. And phones are a feature now, and it's an important feature for a lot of customers, but it's a feature when we talk about Teams as a platform, the collaboration, the power apps, and obviously later on we'll talk about the AI getting infused to this. It's a feature of a wider conversation, and how much value do you get by consolidating phone in to that other bigger collaboration modern work experience.
Yeah, and I think Rick, you and I were chatting about this the other day, and I think I like how you said that, Tom, about PSTN becomes a feature, right? It's not the end all be all mode of communication like traditional phone service would be. It's just another feature that you add on to, and back to Rick, what you and I were talking about, this idea that Teams is really starting to be the pioneer in, we've called it unified communication or omni-channel for many, many years. But I think what we're really starting to see is what omni and unified communications really looks like within Teams.
Yeah. There's a few things that we've got here that we just kind of threw up in these little squares here, or diamonds. But the 300 million daily active users. This ecosystem starts to become really, really important. Azure Communication Services, Power Automate. it
Yeah,
starts to get.
a lot of people are sleeping on Azure Communication Services. Actually, it's really interesting. So it's a CPaaS, so communications kind of as a service, API driven, but it's the same backend that Teams runs on. So it has a very deep integration to Teams, and I mean, it's Microsoft, so they're not moving, super fast, but there's direct routing options in there now. There's SMS options in there. There's calling plan options. But I think the interesting thing there is lots of enterprises or businesses in general trust Microsoft with their comms. They trust Azure as their cloud platform. So as partners, you can do some really clever development alongside Teams and integrate to Teams. It's really interesting.
It is. This is some of my personal interests lie in this Azure Communication Services and things that you can do in Azure Communication Services. I mean, it's the list of things is just is super exciting.
Well, and I think the other interesting thing, especially from an operator perspective, the more we talk to clients and potential clients, it's interesting how, whether they realize it or not, their questions are starting to become very business process oriented, even around their idea of a phone system. And, Rick, you and I hear it all the time. They're starting to ask these questions that ultimately, as the operator, we're even being forced to pivot to Azure Communication Services to solve that complex ask. And as an operator, if you're not paying attention, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, and that's your chance to differentiate as well. Because I mean, let's face it, basic phone connectivity to Teams. There's a lot of options out there. There's much fewer partners and carriers who are doing clever stuff with. I know you guys do a lot of the classic PBX interop. You have the other systems as well. Azure Communication Services. You can start to solve customer problems that go beyond just calling plans and phone.
You start to hit on the customer journey, right? You start to engage, the customer journey and understand how you can mend that gap between how the customer communicates, how their customer communicates, and the business. And we start to get to real live engagement, right? And so it gets pretty darn exciting. Well, let's do this. I'm gonna go right into the Q4 results for Microsoft, because that is, I'd love for you to talk us through some of these things, because there's a couple of them in here that we've already kind of chatted about, but I'd like to see if you can go through a couple of these things for us. But the 17 million subscribers, we know it's huge, leader in the team in the cloud communication space, and now Teams Premium.
Yeah, premium's interesting. So Microsoft, we'll talk about this more. Microsoft are obviously with 300 million monthly active users. Like there's other markets they can go for, but in terms of the kind of saturation, they're getting pretty up there in terms of basic Teams. So they're increasingly focused on Teams Premium, which is a user license that's $10 per user per month list that adds on extra security features, extra fancy webinar features, and some AI meeting recap features, and Teams Rooms and Teams Phone, of course. So those are the things they want to kind of partners to focus on. And they were keen to show the momentum on Teams Premium. So Teams Premium only launched in February, and they're already up to 600,000 active users. They didn't give us a breakdown of that, so we're not clear if that's some big customers that have gone site-wide and kind of bump that number potentially. But my suspicion is that that's lots of customers testing it out with groups that need the special webinar features, so you get extra webinar features. That in itself is a real bargain. And the AI intelligent meeting recap, that's where it'll take a post-meeting recording, slice through it, give you the key bullet points. So think ChatGPT for meeting summaries, basically. That's what that is.
So let's let me ask a couple of questions about this, because I think the webinar feature in itself is pretty darn interesting. And if I think what was the number the last time, but when it wasn't a Teams Premium solution and it was in the standard application or in the standard licensing, there it was something like 20,000 people could join your webinar. Was that the right number?
Yeah, so the webinar works. It works as an interactive standard Teams meeting up to 1,000, and then it rolls over onto kind of the what was called kind of Teams live events in various points. It goes onto a CDM broadcast type mode, so you can go way up there. The premium doesn't give you necessarily more users. What it adds things like green room, tying into your CRM system, some advanced like layout type scenarios, all the pre-meeting registration and post-meeting follow-up gets a bit slicker. So it's kind of just like the nice to haves. If your marketing team are driving a webinar, they're going to want it to tie into the CRM system. They're going to want it to have APIs, and that piece in itself, if you need it, is a real bargain, because webinar platforms can easily run, $20, $30, $40 for a seat for the kind of dedicated webinar platform. So you get a lot of value there for that use case.
More. I remember not too long ago, we had a different subscription for webinars, a year and a half ago, and it was $89 or $99 a month per user, right? So if 3 of us needed it, there you had, had all these disparate charges from different platforms. This is the real opportunity to really trim down your tech stack, right? I mean, addressing all the different, disparate solutions you would have out there, which we run into a lot, by the way. We can talk about that in a little bit, but we run into that quite a bit, where they have disparate solutions out there for some of these different components. And so being able to pull this in via Teams premium license is excellent. What was the other one? It was the chat GPT for meetings to do.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, it's called Intelligent Meeting Recap. So after your meeting, it'll give you a summary and it'll be personalized. So it'll tell you when you were mentioned. It'll give you the breakdown of who said what. It'll let you chapter jump to when a slide changes. So you do get a basic recap in the standard license, but this is that OpenAI ChatGPT overlay to just make it super, super dialed in for you.
How, for someone that sits on meetings all day, and that's, Brandon, you do the same. Tom, I'm sure you sit in meetings all day long. And for someone that has to recap meetings all the time, I have not tried this at all, but I'm excited to give it a run, because it would be great if something detailed out what the meeting was about. And then, I have actionable sort of information to use it. Again, from a productivity perspective, it just drives that productivity.
Well, and not only that, like yesterday, I mean, we're talking real world, right? Rick, you and I was needing to be on a meeting with you yesterday. I couldn't make it, last minute stuff came up. And then I had to turn around. I had to go ask, I asked you, and I asked, I think, 2 other participants how the meeting went, what the takeaways were. And I had to stop all 3 of you for a moment in your day to make you recap and explain to me what was done and how I was needed or not needed. Whereas, like what you guys are talking about with the recap, is how beautiful would it be just to be able to take that and send it to a participant who didn't make the meeting. So now I don't have to bug anybody. I can just look at it and go, oh, this is great.
Well, not just our time, right? But your time. I mean, if you stack up the minutes, and then you're paid you're paid a ton, Brandon. So you start to talk about.
I can barely afford my beer.
you start to break down his cost, and the productivity savings are going to be significant. $10 a month. Here we come. Teams Premium. We're tacking that on as an organization. So those are a couple of great real world experiences, Tom, to bring to light with regards to Teams Premium. You can see why after a short release, 600,000 subscribers are using it. So
yeah,
pretty
definitely.
excellent.
And then Rooms, no new numbers on Rooms, but we know we're up to about 500,000 activated rooms, 70% of the Fortune 500. The momentum there is really strong as well. So that just seems as a business unit just to be ticking along now. And a lot of organizations are, certainly the ones I work with, are committed to that journey. It's just going, room by room by room. Microsoft would always like to push that further. It's a big attack area for them. But yeah, customers seem to be on that journey pretty strongly, hence the 70% of the Fortune 500.
Right. It's shocking to me that you still walk into businesses and you still have a remote control sitting on the table and a couple of HDMI cables that, to plug in your laptop to, and you got a projector, and you still sit there and, click on the projector. It's shocking to me because, obviously we understand what Teams rooms look like, and I've got a UVC 40 bar right here and a pad up there and right in my house and a TV on a cart. Right. Yep. So right from home, it could be because I'm nerdy like that, but I think it's something that every organization should look to move their rooms over into the Teams environment. Here's the one that I get excited about. 1,900 apps in the Teams store. I bet there's listeners out there that don't even know there's a Microsoft Teams store. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most underutilized areas of Teams. Definitely, UC is obvious to everybody, right? I have meetings, I click, I go to meetings. That's a workload we had before, and it's new, but it's the cloud, but it's basically the same. Phone, similar thing, like I get it. Chat, everybody gets chat because they have chat on their mobile and they get chat. But being able to bring in your line of business workflows and your apps, so things like Salesforce and ServiceNow and Trello, HubSpot, all those kind of things in as apps and bots, it's a different approach to working. So I think it's not super discoverable unless someone kind of trains the users. So yeah, I think there's a lot of mileage still to go in that.
Yeah, and I think we brought this up on an episode before. I'm a huge proponent of it because I'm if Rick and I were to pull up our mobile phones side by side, he has what I call icon disease on his phone. He's got 6,000 applications installed, and I've got like 3. And the point being there is Teams. What I love about this idea and this concept of an app and what you just described, Tom, is I now, especially on the mobile, that it just adds efficiency. But now I open up Teams if I need to do something in my CRM. There's no more switching apps. I live in one app. I keep it clean. I keep it simple. I don't have to pause and think now, okay, which app do I need to go to? There I am in Teams, pivoting in their app ecosystem.
Here's my app, texting right there, right? There's my app right there for texting. I'm just, you use texting. If you're a texting person, this is super cool to have right in your Teams. And you can, again, that's a North America thing because we're super dependent in the US on texting. But it's fantastic to have it just sit right in your, right in your Teams application. And so
that bar you showed on the left rail there, you can customize that to who the role is, or the person can customize it themselves. So if they're frontline, first line, you can have their line of business apps there as well. The other thing I love about it is not just reaching your apps in Teams, but the Teams apps pushing content. So if you have your CRM, maybe you have your wins go into a common channel, and then everybody can react and discuss about that in the same place. So rather than everybody getting an email alert or everybody getting an individual alert, now we bring the conversation together in the right channel, which is just such an improvement in productivity.
Yeah, and Tom, I have a question for you because you probably talk to a lot of people out there. How many? And this is just a swag. Like, how many companies do you think are out there that are still operating in that kind of legacy style where the business collaboration is Teams or Slack or whatever, but then maybe their CRM, like Salesforce, has their chat widget? How many companies do you think are still kind of stuck in that mindset that, okay, my group that works in Salesforce, they're chatting in Salesforce, but the rest of the business is off in Slack? Or, I've been in businesses that use Slack and Teams and another application depending on the silo, and to me is not efficient at all.
No, it's definitely around. Like, it used to be like Zoom, Slack, and Teams were kind of duking it out depending on your Slack had a really strong foothold traditionally because they were kind of first to that kind of chat type scenario for business. I see it less and less these days. I still see pockets like Zoom for things like webinars or customer facing, because some people like that tool, but less and less, to be honest. Slack have slowly bumped their prices up a bit as well, and it's like not just the productivity impact but the pure ROI of most enterprises are already licensed for Teams, so it's kind of like, why would we do two things? But getting them all onto Teams for internal collab is one thing. Like things like, to your point, like they might be using Salesforce and they're using Teams, but have they actually installed the app and brought those two worlds together? Not necessarily.
Yeah. No. And then you're right. There is this. We see it every day. The amount of businesses that use. If you have if you're big enough to have department heads and they've all got their own credit cards, you see a flurry of applications and services and apps, that could be consolidated into an environment, but they're all disparately deployed.
A fun conversation to have there with organizations is not just about the cost of that, because that's one thing, not just about the productivity impacts, that's one thing, but also about the data rules, data retention, discoverability. Like if you look into things like the GDPR rules, you're supposed to be able to turn up all the records about any customer. How are you doing that if one department's using Zoom, one department's using Slack, one department's using Teams, and another department's using God knows what because they've just put it on their credit card and they found the new thing. Like you don't want to stifle their kind of ability to innovate, but you've got to think about when you, particularly as you grow into a bigger business, how you deal with that data coherently, and it's very hard if you're using dozens of platforms.
Yeah. We just added compliance recording, and what was interesting about that is we've got APIs now into, let's say, Global Relay or Smarsh as an example, right? Specifically for that, so we can start to pull the data out for organizations and deliver a quality sort of a solution.
Yeah, that's becoming increasingly important as well. Like it used to be just the very tightly regulated industries, but now recording is becoming more and more commonplace across all different verticals.
Yeah. So paid 365 commercial seats.
Yep. So Office 365, after I just said there's, they're starting to top out in terms of market share. Clearly, there's still some places to go. So commercial went up 11% year over year. So that's quite a big jump in Office 365. Now that's Office 365, which is broken out differently to Microsoft 365, which is treated as a subset of that. But considering I think we were at something like 400 and something million seats, it must be closing in on the 500 million at some point.
That's incredible to keep up that kind of growth in that space, right? I mean, that's a big number for growth, even just with the size of the base that they've got.
Yeah.
All right. So paid subscribers for Copilot. I've delayed saying Copilot because
You've done well. We've got 26 minutes in. No Copilot.
Because I feel like the conversation's gonna go down that path quite heavily. But 600 paid customers. Those are your big enterprise customers that Microsoft says, hey, you want to partner and take down some new stuff? What do you think?
Yeah, this is interesting. Paid is an important thing, right? So normally when Microsoft preview a technology, they're not asking customers to pay for it just to test it. So that shows you the appetite for this Copilot AI stuff. I mean, it's hit the wider world as like a recognized technology. So you've got CTOs at all the big orgs saying we need to be on this bandwagon. So you had to pay to get into this pilot, and you get to test it. It's still early days for Copilot. It's amazing if you looked at the Microsoft stock price during the Inspire conference, shot up because everybody's excited about AI, and we'll talk about the pricing in a minute. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. But yeah, 600 customers testing out right now. We don't have a GA date for it yet, but we'll probably see that kind of later in the year. If you think around in the Ignite timeframe, the kind of November timeframe, I'd expect to hear more information later in the year. But genuinely, Microsoft are still testing, feeling out, making sure it's ready. So they're not going to be artificially rushed. They're going to make sure it's the right product for the right time.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's pretty impressive. The paid subscribers, 600 already. I'll tell you, if you start to look at some of the productivity gains that you see, and if someone really navigates that well and authors that really well, then the productivity seems like that is well worth whatever that we're going to get to the payment. Well worth whatever it's going to cost.
Yeah, so $30 per user per month was Microsoft's opening price for it. And enterprises, if they're going to buy it for a lot of users, will be able to do some kind of deal. They always can. But that's a substantial uplift on the Office 365 license. So if you think about the high-end Office 365, Microsoft 365 license, you're talking about $50, give or take. So for a feature, that is a substantial uplift. But I don't think we've seen a feature in our lifetimes that can potentially, and we'll have to get our hands on this because I haven't had my hands on it yet. But I've talked to a lot of people who are using it, and they're very bullish on. A lot of skeptics I talk to are still very bullish on how good it is. Save you time, even you look at sky high salaries like Brandon's. You save him a minute a day, and
it's worth it.
That back. Yeah, I mean, like knowledge workers, typically that $30, if they're saving time, they're making their Word doc into a PowerPoint, their PowerPoint into a Word document. It's not going to do it for you. You still have to finish that off. It's a starter for kind of 10. I'd say you about 60-70% of the way there, but huge productivity savings.
So I think our last week's episode, we debated this topic I wouldn't say super heavily, but I think we debated the cost over the value and what it's going to do. And for me, I think there's going to be, I think, companies that just go adopt it, right? They're just be like, oh, AI, let's go do it. But the way I look at it is, I go, there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're looking at, especially a $30 uplift, and that's things around, is it going to be easy to learn? Like, for just the knowledge worker, is it going to be intuitive? Is it, or am I going to burden my workers, and now they're not being productive because we're too busy learning Copilot? That's one factor. The other factor you just mentioned was it's not going to finish your work. You've still got to go put the polishing touches on it. How many of my workers are going to now use that as, okay, here it is, here you go, and they're not going to do anything with it, and now I'm actually getting worse work out of them.
That's a concern I've heard multiple times, like, what if my workers just rely on it overly rely on it. It's an interesting debate, but I mean, like, whenever I hear this with organizations, I'm like, I presume you have some methodology now to manage your people to know they're not doing crappy work, right? So, like,
yeah, I was going to say, what does it matter if they're
so
getting
they might
the job?
they might do it 3 months, but you'll probably work it out pretty quickly.
No, I think you're always going to have the performers, right? And you're always going to have the people you need to encourage along. But it's still a valid, as you're looking to roll that out across an organization, you definitely need to consider the pros, cons, the ramifications, the consequences.
Definitely. And you're going to have to train your users very heavily. It's a whole new paradigm. But I mean, it's kind of like, you kind of equate it to search. Like, a Google search comes along, and, like, does everybody just Google the answer and copy it? It's like, well, that's kind of what we all do today. We just inefficiently go gather our own research, put it together, and then we pull that together into a better copy. So it's kind of doing a better job than search in some contexts. But another one that I think is really interesting is, we all have this Microsoft 365 Office suite. Like, do we all know how to drive PowerPoint well? Not really. Do we know how to drive Excel well? Not really. No. So, like, if you can go into PowerPoint and say, I want this to have fancy star transitions, and it drives the app to do the thing, like, we're unlocking a lot of value that's tied up in, I mean, what would it have cost you to train me to know how to do that, or to more likely have a different marketing team that do that for me, because you're not going to train me to do it and I'm not going to learn how to do it. So there's the creation of content, there's the summarization of content, but there's also being able to unlock the power of some of these tools. Like, Excel is another really interesting one. I've got this data set, I want to see the mean, median, and mode, and I want to see a pie chart. And see, like, imagine if you could just say what you wanted to happen, and it started to generate that. It's really interesting.
Well, I confess I pay for the premium Chat GPT today, right? And I, I probably run 50 tasks out of that a month, somewhere around there, that are actual meaningful tasks for me to gather information, to display information, and it's not even, that's not turned inwards to, to my tenant, so that I can pull out information that's in my information, right? So it's pretty interesting. I think it'll be well worth the $30. It's my opinion here. I think it's well worth the $30 per user, just because I know that today I probably save, just on the limited fee. And I say limited only because it's, it's not even up to date external information. It's just do this for me. So on tasks that aren't even in the tenant yet, I know it saves me probably several hours a week in content creation or organization of some sort, right? And so I can't even imagine the productivity gains when you see that inside your tenant.
Yeah, and this is the beginning of the journey. So this is new technology. This is the worst it's ever going to be, and it's already impressing people. You imagine where we are a few years down the line, when Microsoft have genuinely got the data together. Some of the more advanced demos they gave on the Satya launch of this was like the idea that I could say, oh, I've got a meeting coming up with G12. Like, what were the last things we've talked about? And because you've got data in the tenant, it can span my emails with Rick, like a call I had with Brandon that we recorded, like some chats we had. It could span all that and bring it together and be like, oh, remember, you mentioned you do this and this and that, and we talked about this and that, like that stuff. And you look at Sales Copilot, which they launched, like that's the beginning of that, where you can easily equate an ROI, right? You're arming that salesperson with the information they need. It's really interesting.
I
It's
think.
Oh, go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
I think it's no doubt this is going to be game changer. I mean, I think anyone paying attention already knows it. 3,000%, right? There's so many little tasks that it'd be well worth it just to solve. How long does it take me to write up a meeting schedule or an outline for a meeting where I can go prepare my audience for it? Whereas, based on all the notes I've taken, the email communication, the chat communication, I can just tell it to go schedule the meeting for me. I imagine it will do things like that where it saves me so much time.
I'm going to bring it back to the business for just a second, just to the street. I'll call it the street because I'm curious. We're in this space. We're leading edge communications and all this great stuff, right? What do you think the time frame is, or what would you expect the time frame for this to really be kind of mainstream? Okay, the enterprise is taken down because Microsoft is keenly focused on the enterprise space and showing it to the EUIs of the world, right? What does it look like for the normal business out there? And maybe it's an insurance company, maybe it's I would say the knowledge worker, maybe it's law firms, whatever it is. But how do we translate that? What do you think that that time between here's this cool stuff that because it's not GA yet, we don't have it yet, and real world application and use is going to be? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, certainly this is AI, and ChatGPT has already broken out of the technology community bubble, right? It's a mainstream, everybody understands it. The usage numbers for ChatGPT, like commercial, are crazy. So I think most people have experimented. I think that most is actually not true, is it? Like a large proportion of people have experimented. I think as it becomes part of search, as Google and Bing bring it into search, that will normalize it for people because they'll get used to asking questions, not searching for keywords. I think it'll be a decent amount of time for that Microsoft 365 to where we're all like, that's just how we work. But I think it'll be things like Copilot in email that'll actually kind of be the thing that drives it. Like, if you can solve that, my email's a mess problem, and you can come back from your annual leave and be like, hey Copilot, like, delete all the stuff I don't care about, give me a bullet list of things I do care about. That's the kind of thing that will be like, oh, this is like, how can I not have this thing? And people move around organizations, and it's a bit like when instant messaging came in, certain orgs would get it, and then the word would get around that that's the thing to do, and eventually it will just become the norm. So I've gracefully avoided any kind of.
I was gonna say, is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years?
Well, we're 10 years into UC, and we're still talking about deploying UC. So
that's true. What's interesting though is if you talk about the numbers for ChatGPT, and what was the launch date? October of last year, November. So we're coming up not quite on a year, 10 months in production essentially. And most people have touched it. Now, doesn't mean businesses have adopted it, right? And businesses haven't taken it in and said, okay, here's how we use ChatGPT and use it as part of their criteria or their tool set. But when Microsoft sort of normalizes it, and Microsoft productizes it so that it's consumable appropriately for a business.
Microsoft makes it safe as well, which is a really big deal for businesses, because if they're using third-party tools, they're not quite sure what the data rules are around them reusing that data and whatever. And actually, OpenAI's paid plan has some pretty good rules around how they use data as well. But for a typical kind of CIO, CTO, they're like, okay, that's the blessed enterprise way. I'm really scared my workers are going to start pasting their code into ChatGPT or God knows what else, or their proposal documents. I was talking to a firm who does construction, and I hadn't appreciated how secretive they are about what they're bidding on, who they're working with. They were super paranoid about security, the same level as banks and legal I work with. I was like, oh yeah, because this is worth millions to us. So the wrong person pasting that into the wrong tool is a real worry for them. So I think part of it might just be defensive as well. It's like, well, if we give them the blessed tool, that minimizes the risk.
Right. I'm gonna take a massive guess here, Tom. So I'm gonna say in 2.5 years, roughly 10% of the user base of 300 million people will be licensed for Copilot. So is that 30 million subscribers?
Yeah, 30 million.
30 million subscribers in 2.5 years. That's my guess.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well,
Way high, way low?
I think that might be high. I don't know, $30, 30 million. Like, who can afford it? Somewhere I wouldn't. Yeah, I'd say I'd say you're in the ballpark. Like, I reckon it's going to be 3-4 years to be like more mainstream, definitely.
Well, and I think it's going to be interesting to see 3-4 years down the road what the pricing looks like then. Like
Yeah, can it maintain that premium?
Mhm.
The other thing we should talk about as well is Microsoft are putting in Bing Chat Enterprise, which is their enterprise version of essentially ChatGPT, into their M365 plans included. So that's like their on-ramp. So if you're not in the M plans, and in Microsoft land, we have the business plans, then we have the Office 365 plans, then we have the M365 plans, the top tier. It'll be bundled in top tier, but if you're in the other plans, you can add it for $5 per user per month. Interestingly, the business plans, they're all M plans as well. So anybody in the sub 300 seats gets this Bing Enterprise Chat included. That's their on-ramp to AI. Oh, hey, AI is really good, but I wish it could do my PowerPoint for me. That's what you step up to for Copilot. So I think you're right on Copilot, Rick, but I think the enterprise chat thing might just become default to most people.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Copilot for Teams Phone. This one's obviously this near and dear to our hearts. So Copilot for Teams Phone. What's that going to look like?
Yeah, this is neat, and this is a really compelling reason to go to Teams Phone beyond just I want to put my phone in the cloud and I want my phone to be in a single application. So this will be exactly what it sounds like. So Copilot, you can already in the preview have it in your meeting. So it can be essentially sidebarred in your meeting, and you can ask what's everybody said so far, and it'll give you a summary. What's the sentiment of the meeting? How has Sarah engaged with the meeting? You can ask it interactive questions in real time. This will be the same thing for PSTN calls and VoIP calls.
And
So
how awesome? How often do you sit on calls and you check out for half a second, not on purpose necessarily, and all of a sudden you have to say, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Like, can you imagine just being able to like go ask it? Oh, I missed that question. What was that? Or missed that statement. What was that? And boom, it's right there for you.
Yeah. Well, here's a really slick thing. I think you're right. And here's a really slick thing I saw in one of the demos is they have an incoming call, and it's not really the right person. So the person starts explaining what they want. Like it's not the right person. They can just be like, oh, what was the customer's issue? What did they need? You bring someone else into the call, and you can share the bullets of what's been said so far. So you're tracking all that information all the time. Yeah.
Not just for the internal, not just for the person, but for that customer journey. How many times have you heard that when you call a place and you have to explain it again and again and again, right? Yeah. To the same company, right? So now your customer journey doesn't take that hit, and you keep that sentiment really. No. Here's what's interesting to me, and I don't know the answer to this, but maybe you do. If it's real time, and it's real time for anyone in the call, let's just say if I'm running the call, not necessarily preserved for, because we have sentiment analysis today, right? In contact centers where the administrator typically can see what it looks like, right? What that sentiment looks like. But if anyone on the call can see what this sentiment looks like, not necessarily the end user, but everybody else can see what the sentiment looks like. That's pretty exciting. Again, just to pass it on either internally to be able to capture what the person is saying externally. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the key thing. It's giving it to you, and you're having even in a meeting, you're having a one-to-one conversation with the Copilot. So it's giving you what you're asking, and it's doing it all the time. But I mean, you mentioned about the customer journey. I hadn't really thought about this, but I mean, we all organizations typically record all the contact center calls. They'll save all the transcriptions, but they're not making the most of that. It's not going to the CRM because it's a call transcription, but there's no reason why it couldn't go through every call, do the bulleted summary, put that in the CRM for the customer, and suddenly you've got bullets of like recurring themes of this customer, or issues that were resolved previously. It could make the CRM thing have so much more juice.
Well, you can. I mean, the actual reason for doing sentiment analysis and for recording calls is to make to make that either that person better at what they're doing, right? Better at their job, let's just say, right? Or it's to make sure that we provide as good a customer journey as we can. So if you could imagine, you have this information, and now you can go scan it all. And just if I'm supervising, let's just say I'm the manager, maybe somebody doesn't come to me, but I can have Power Automate. Let's just say if a sentiment is not the way I want it to be, or if sentiment hits something like this, why don't you take that capture, send it to supervisors, and now we can engage.
Yeah, this is where you get into. So Copilot is really your personal use of this AI, but absolutely we can apply this same Azure OpenAI or other AI engine logic to multiple sessions. You mentioned call recording at the start of the session, Rick. Like if for the first time, a contact center manager could query what are the top themes, this week with customers. It can span all the calls. It can bring it back intelligently into a summary like that. That just wasn't possible before. So the level of unlocking the power locked in all those recordings and all that data is going to be really exciting.
It's creating a ton of new data points for people to understand and manage their business at a more granular level. And it just, again, I say this, like, I think I say this way too much these days, the productivity. But as a business owner, I think about what is it? What can you accomplish, right? On a per person basis. So maybe Brandon can finally, if there's two of him, maybe that big salary is then justified, right?
No, I think you need to double the salary if it's going to be double the output.
I was going to say you're getting double the workout, and I have to know how to use Copilot. So I think I need a raise.
The know how to use it thing's really interesting, Brandon. So you see Microsoft now pushing really hard on get your organization prepared, and there's a LinkedIn learning course about how AI works and how to use prompts. But I think you make a really good point. There's a journey there where we're going to have to teach people how to drive the most out of these tools, and prompt engineering seems to be the term we've adopted as an industry, which makes me laugh. Like the whole thing is AI makes things simpler, and then we come up with a really technical name for how to drive the AI. But there's going to be some learning to do, particularly when it comes to embedding it into things like Outlook and PowerPoint and Excel. Like, how do you optimally, what do you say when you come back from holiday to the Copilot to make it summarize your emails for you? So there's a good opportunity for enterprises and partners in the short term to make the most of that investment to train their users.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do we have for shared calling?
Oh yeah, this is interesting. So it'd be good to get your opinion on this. Actually, this is the ability to have a single DDI shared among multiple Teams phone users. So previously, obviously on classic phone systems, we could do this all the time. We could have one DDI shared across a bunch of users who didn't need a dedicated DDI. Inbound, it goes to an auto attendant. Outbound, they make a normal call. So now we'll be able to do that on Teams. So this is for either Microsoft calling plans on pay-as-you-go, or Operator Connect, or direct routing providers. You can give one main number to an auto attendant, and then 10, 20, 50, 10,000 users can all be aligned to that, and they don't have to have a DDI per user.
I think that's fantastic. I think it's another angle that Microsoft has taken to enable let's say the SME, the SMB. We're working with a retail organization right now. They're not, maybe they're global retail organization that has several thousand locations across the U.S. today. And they're retail stores, and they operate very much in that scenario. They're not, there's no, how Microsoft Teams is, identity based, right? Yeah. So you kind of decouple that a little bit and allow a DID to come into the organization and ring the entire store. And utilize a phone system just like it's a normal phone system. So yeah, I think by having both those, the identity base and decoupling that identity base and letting it share across the devices, I think it's huge.
And I think it just simplifies deployment strategy, and it gets rid of the messiness of, we all know there's ways to hack shared calling without shared calling. But this just brings simplicity, right? It's easier for the end consumer to understand that, hey, you want the same number? This is the simple way to do it. Versus how many times have I or my team tried to explain this to a customer? Oh, well, here's how we have to do it. And they just sit there.
We pretend they've all got numbers.
Yep. So I think it's brilliant that they're doing it, and to to Rick's example, I think retail is going to eat it up.
Yeah.
It's nice to have both of them because identity based, it does provide a significant sort of upswing in feature sets when it's, when you have, when it does belong to you, and that whole shift that we've been doing into the Microsoft Teams space, we've all sort of gotten on board with it. And now if you can separate that now from, headquarters for this global headquarters for this organization, plus the retail stores are handled differently. If you can just handle those both, in the same tenant and handle them differently, that's it's just another way for them to become the platform that is ubiquitous across the business. That's pretty exciting. All right, Teams Phone in India. We'll get to Teams Phone Mobile here in a minute, but Teams Phone in India.
Yeah, India's a fun one. So there's all sorts of regulatory things out there where you have to break out locally. So we could do Teams Phone today in India with direct routing. I've done Teams Phone back with Skype for Business, but basically you have to break out with the relevant local best carrier.
Mhm.
What this allows Microsoft to do is working with partners. So it's a partner play, Tata Business, and I'm forgetting the other one, Airtel, I think. 3 partners initially. They'll be able to sell a SKU, a variant of Teams Phone that's all blessed for Cloud Operator Connect. So you'll be able to do genuine cloud telephony in India, which is a big deal because it takes away all the infrastructure requirement and means that a lot of organizations have big teams out in India, particularly international organizations. So they'll be able to be on a level playing field with true Cloud Operator Connect telephony.
Exciting. Teams Phone Mobile expansion.
Yeah, this is just new markets. So we're getting Norway, Liechtenstein are coming in. Teams Phone Mobile, this is the first time we're seeing one operator have multiple countries. So up to today, it's been one operator per country. So it's nice to see it expanding. I'd like to see it faster. It's still quite slow rolling, but I think in the future that will be a big part of the phone story. Will be the mobile first story.
Yeah. Brandon and I have a discussion with the eSIM folks. I think it's Lee's organization, Lee Asset's organization, Tango. We have a discussion with them next week on deploying that or looking at that.
Super interesting tech. So they're taking the fixed line number and extending it via SIP gateway to eSIM. So interesting discussion. I've got hands on with that. It's definitely got an interesting use case, particularly those that are mostly want to be on a mobile but want to have a fixed number identity.
Yeah, and that's and for everyone's sort of benefit here, the eSIM is in most phones these days, right? In the new Apples and I think the new Androids, there is a SIM card embedded on those, and that's the eSIM, right? It's already on there. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's like a virtual kind of secure enclave that you can load a SIM card up via a QR code or like a code, so you don't have to have any physical, like we all pop in the physical SIMs. Mm-hmm. It's all embedded into the chips, and you can just scan a QR code and you're on the mobile network.
Very good. I saw notes. I'm just going to hop up here. I'm going to skip the landing page for just a moment because I saw Microsoft dubbed, or someone dubbed next year, 2024, the year of the AI cloud partner. Is that?
Yeah, so Microsoft has gone as far as to rename and rebrand their partner program the AI Cloud Partner Program. So they only rebranded the partner program last October to the Cloud Partner Program, and now they've appended AI. It doesn't affect any certifications or designations or anything like that. It's the same program. They're putting in some open AI benefits for partners, but I think they're really trying to land with partners and with Wall Street, like AI and cloud are the same thing, and we're the player in both of them. Like you can't have one conversation without the other. So all partners are under the AI Cloud Partner Program now.
Very good. Let's. We've got a few minutes left, and there's some interesting things on. This is your update for July 2023, and I'd love for you just to take us through the highlights or through the biggest components in here that you think are obviously they're all important, but that are most impactful.
We can pick some out. So thinking about the audience, so Android 9 device extension is interesting. So Teams phones, the physical IP phones, as opposed to the service, all run Android. A lot of those phones run Android 9, and that was due to become end of mainstream support in August, and Microsoft have pushed that back to November, so it's given a bit more time for the OEMs to update. Good news is nearly all the devices are getting updated to 11 or 12. I've got a list on my Empowering.Cloud site, but if you've got Teams phones, just know that you'll be expecting a firmware update in the Teams admin center to update those phones.
Very good. I'm posting Empowering.Cloud on our chat here, so we can see
Nice,
that there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Other ones to watch out for is if you're using user licenses on Teams rooms. So if you run them in a user mode, that isn't supported, never was supported. Microsoft have extended that deadline again back to the end of the year, but you should be on Teams Room Basic or Teams Room Pro, so watch out for that one. And last one I'll call out is the new Teams client. Are you guys running the new client or the old client? Where are you at?
I'm on the preview, and I just noticed they here very recently did a massive update on the preview mode. So I'm on the new one.
Yeah. Rick, are you rocking the new one or the old one?
I'm not rocking the new one just yet. Nope. I'm not there just yet.
Cool. So Microsoft are kind of gradually getting up to general availability of that. So as of October, that will be GA. GA means it's supported, it can be used in production, you can raise tickets on, etc. They won't be forcing you to it just yet. So they'll put the toggle up. You as an admin can control this if you want to, but if you don't touch anything, more of your users will start seeing the test this out toggle. In October, both will be supported, and as we get into 2025, they'll be looking to tail off support for the traditional Teams 1.0 client, and everybody will be on the new client, which is generally good news. Like, the new client is more responsive, faster, better, but there is a kind of long tail of really like edge case features. But with 300 million monthly active users, edge case is always a lot of people. So if you're a Teams admin, keep an eye on the preview client and make sure you're happy it's doing everything you want it to do for when you cut your users over.
Yeah, I'll preview it real quick. That toggle you're talking about is here up in the corner.
Yep. And you can flick toggle. As an individual user, you can flick back and forward. So if you find it's quite a nice one to check out with a pilot group, and they can always flick themselves back. So up until recently, we didn't have some advanced phone features around call queues and auto attendant. I think that gap's closed. Line of business apps, but there are a few little bits and pieces where Microsoft developed things for the 1.0 client that's still coming to the 2.0.
Yeah, and I see I have an update, but my favorite feature so far, not the performance, hands down, it's eye-opening how good it is. But my favorite is I now can have multiple accounts. And for those of us that are in the tech world that need our sandbox, our QA, our demo, being able to switch back and forth without the hassle. Beautiful.
If you work with multiple customers or your guests on multiple tenants, you can chat in multiple tenants at once. And like you say, you can tenant switch really fast. So yeah, that's a big improvement.
Yeah, you can't see my guest access into Microsoft. I like text or message bombing them when they're least expecting it.
Or we let ourselves into their meetings whenever we have meetings with Microsoft, and we let ourselves into the meeting. Hey guys,
surprise!
We're here already. It's G12 again, guys. We don't really do that.
I did it once accidentally.
Accidentally. All right. Well, Brandon, any parting questions for Tom? I know it's late for him. Anything you want to lay out there at the very end of this thing?
I'm looking forward to when we finally get our hands on Copilot and then coming back and getting on a show together and I don't know if you want to say laughing, giggling, smiling, but comparing notes.
Yeah, let's do it. I think that's that'll be really interesting. And it'll be, everybody should set their expectations here. So, it's going to be the web apps first. It's going to be rolling out to the new Outlook rather than old Outlook. So we're at the peak of the hype cycle now. So it'll be nice to get hands on and see it outside of Microsoft and outside of the 600 preview customers, how bought in are we to this $30, like you said, Brandon? How much training does a real non-technical person need for this stuff? Let's definitely do that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll bring another drink with me.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've got to always drink on these pods now.
That's right.
Last question for you, Tom. Are you in New York for the Cavell Live Summit or the Cavell? I think it's the Cavell Live Summit, North America.
No, I'd love to be, but I'm not. But I hear they've got a good lineup of speakers. Rick, anybody in particular speaking there?
I think they've invited me to speak on that.
Yours
That'll be
truly.
entertaining. That will be entertaining to have me on a panel, because I'll just be a sponsor for G12. No, I'm just kidding. I won't be. You'll have my unbiased information coming out there. No,
the Cavell events are great. I always do the London ones, and I heard that the US one was really good last time. So highly recommend their events. They're really good.
Yeah, very excited there. And then November, there's the Cavell group. It's the Microsoft one, right? It's the, I forget what it's called, but it's Microsoft specific. So I imagine you'll be there in November. Yeah.
Yeah. The Ignite show in November.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Okay, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. We're at the top of the hour. We certainly appreciate it. We know it's late over there. We always enjoy having you as a guest. This time it was great to not, there was so much content to talk about. We didn't have really time to go into Microsoft Teams Phone and show you some fancy things that Brandon likes to show. So we didn't do that this time. This time, I think this show is dedicated to just pulling out all the information that's been swirling around for the last month and really kind of laying it out for our listeners. So thank you so much for taking part in that. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no worries. Always great to be on the show. And again, thanks for the support of Empowering.Cloud. Do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, everyone. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time. Next Friday, 12 noon Pacific. We'll always be here.